Hello, my name is Roshan Narayan, and thank you for joining us on In20. If you're watching us on YouTube, do
that back four and protect and pass the ball very, very simply. He is brilliant. If you put leg.
Danny Mills, former professional footballer, a well-to-do businessman, and now motivational speaker. Danny, you gave a little pre-game pep talk to two teams that were participating in the FA Cup. Could you tell us how that happened, and what did you tell these two teams?
Yeah, no, I think it was set up by Emirates and the FA, just to do something a little bit different for the underdogs, for the giant killings. Of course, I was on a giant killing, the wrong end of it, back in the day when we were top of the Premier League and we lost to Cardiff, two divisions below us. And it was really interesting because the poor lads from Chorley, they'd just come in from training. It had been snowing, and of course, because of COVID and everything else, they all sat in their cars. So there's, sort of 25 little thumbnails on my screen of all these guys sort of, turning on their heaters, trying to get as warm as possible at the end of training. But it was nothing to do with me, let's be honest. I just said, to go out there, they were then probably the favourites because obviously Derby had all the issues around COVID. I just said, look, just go out there and give it everything you've got. Believe in yourselves because you are, you deserve to be here. You've had some great results to get where you've got to go. And now what an opportunity, playing against this young team from Derby to get into the fourth round. So whatever you do, it's a myth to say just go out and enjoy it because you only enjoy it when you win. So just go out there, do everything possible, use set pieces, do what you can. But, just believe in yourselves that you're good enough to be there. Do play how you normally play and see what happens. Didn't quite work as well. Didn't quite work as well for Boreham Wood, who were unbelievably well prepared, but we'll miss that one.
Yeah, I was about to say the romance of the FA Cup, but just to home in on what you've just said, is it easier for players such as these teams, and I mean that by no disrespect whatsoever, it could be any level of players, it's easier to correlate to someone at their level as compared to like a Messi or Cristiano giving them a pep talk on how to succeed in life?
Yeah, sometimes. I felt I had to introduce myself. Because I thought any of these players under 30 have probably got no idea what I did and no idea that I played. They just probably thought I'm some gobby guy that's on the radar or on the TV from time to time. So I thought I'd introduce myself and just say what's happened. But no, I think sometimes and I said, look, the team that we were at Leeds was full internationals. Woodgate, Rio Ferdinand, Alan Smith, myself, Batty. Nigel Martin, Ian Hart, Harry Kewell. It was a full strength side, and we got beat. Because our attitude wasn't right. We were a little bit arrogant, perhaps, a little overconfident. And I said, and you've got to take that mentality into it. That's why you get shocks in the FA Cup. And I think sometimes it's just players of that ilk. They just need to have the belief. And don't be in awe, because I think that's the biggest problem. You've often lost the game before you start because it's. You walk into a big stadium and it's just like, you're a bit sort of blind in the headlights and, oh, wow. And I mustn't go and tackle these players because, they're stars or, they're international, or I mustn't, So no, just do your normal job. The lower leagues is quite physical. So, get stuck in, upset their rhythm and do what you can. So, yeah, hopefully I'll get a call for the fourth round.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, you are the motivational speaker that I know you are. But could you explain something to me or try and motivate me when it comes to my love affair with VAR? First and foremost, West Brom beating Wolves. If anybody had told that would happen, either you're a bookie or you're a really good a fortune cookie. That actually has some rhyming skills there. I don't know where that came from. But there were a couple of moments. A poor one at that. But there were a couple of moments in that game. One, there was a penalty for West Brom, and then the handball, which could have been not given, but it was for me a handball. Let's talk about the penalty first for West Brom. Now, when I first saw it, I definitely thought that it was outside the box, the first point of contact. I've been told by my producers and my team over here that his foot was on the line. Was it a penalty for you?
I think it is. I think it's a reckless challenge. You have to remember the line is part of the penalty area. So anything that touches the line at all is in the box. So there has to be daylight, you know, for it to be outside the box. I think it is inside the box. It's a record challenge. I don't think really anybody, you know, disagreed with either of the penalties that West Brom were given in that game. The handball is a completely different situation. It seems to change from week to week. You know, we saw one last week in the Sheffield United game on the, you know, over the weekend that I thought it was a foul. You know, I thought Billy Sharp had fouled the Newcastle defender and had pulled him and had hold of his shirt. And that was what made him sort of like lose balance, swing his arm and hit his hand. But the penalty was given. You talk to a lot of footballers, ex-players, and say, well, yeah, of course he's handballed it because he was pulled and this, that and the other. I mean, that's sort of a natural position. Where else is he going to put his hand at that point? You know, it brushes his hand. Handball law is farcical, isn't it? It's so subjective because there is no consistency. You don't know from 1 minute to the next. They tried to do it in the start of the season with, right, if it just hit hand, it's a penalty no matter what. Yeah. That caused all sorts of issues, all sorts of problems. Now we've gone back to deliberate, intentional, and it's just a mess, absolute mess.
Okay, so do we actually give credit to the referees now and the Referees Association and your favorite friend, Mike Riley, that, listen, they've taken a stand and they've gone back to something that's a little more sensible when it comes to giving a handball?
I think if the referee gives it, or you have to go with the on-field decision for those sort of really minor decisions. If the referee doesn't think it's a handball, you've got to go with his judgment, I think. Unless VAR is absolutely blatant. And this is the whole thing. VAR was brought in for big mistakes, you know, game-changing moments. If you're talking about whether it's brushed his fingernail, you know, with the edge of the ball, has the stitching of the ball touched his fingernail, I think we're going into it too deep, you know, because you simply can't tell half the time. And it's taken way too long in those situations. You know, if it's clear, I've said, look, VAR should be one replay at full speed, one replay in slow motion, done. That's it. Maybe two replays at full speed and one in slow motion. That's it. If you cannot tell from that whether you need to overturn the decision, then it's not clear and obvious. Simple as that. You know, if you're going through it, you know, if you're micromanaging, look at all the little macros, almost doing it frame by frame, it's always going to look worse. And also, you're looking for something, so you're going to try and find it, and that's half the problem, I think.
Okay, fair enough. So we will leave it at that because, you know, we spoke about the result very shortly. West Brom 3, Wolves 2.
Unbelievable result.
What was that? Just a one-off, or is Sam Allardyce getting his footing right?
Yeah, I think it's Big Sam, isn't it? You know, it's what he does. They get organised. They'll be disappointed with the goals that they conceded, but you know the attitude was there. They never gave up. You know,
it's a major lift, right?
Yeah, but you know, long throwing, and suddenly now, you know, it's really condensed the bottom end of that table. You know, and there'll be 2 or 3 clubs now really looking over their shoulder.
Okay, when we were showing that little handball moment, there was another player involved in that, and that was Fabinho Silva for Wolves. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm becoming a fan of this young man. He looks the part.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player. It doesn't look like Wolves dip into the transfer market, obviously with Jimenez out. You know, Nuno Espirito Santo has always liked a smallish squad. It's tough for a young player to come in and you know and take over from you know somebody of that ilk in Jimenez. He's obviously a good player, but he's going to have ups and downs. It's going to take him time to settle. He's got a lot of quality, and he's going to score some goals. So I think we just have to wait and see how he does. I think he's done very, very well up till now, but I'm sure there will be a little bit of a dip in form. But also Wolves' form, I think they're going to be safe. That's not a problem, and mid-table will be fine for them. But of course, you know, when you do have a small squad and you lose a couple of players through injury, through obviously transfers, it's very, very difficult to maintain those high standards.
And I might be jumping the gun here, but because I've seen him play in Porto, and you know for a fact that I love my European football at times more than you know the Premier League. You know, it paid my bills for 10 years. But when I watch him in Porto and I see him here again, he really reminds me of, and don't shoot me, and I might be overstating it here, but he reminds me of a very young Pablo Aimar.
Well, I mean, he's got quality. You know, he's a good player. Clearly, you know, they wouldn't have brought him in for any other reason than that. But again, young players, it's about consistency. You know, look at the likes of Marcus Rashford from time to time, who, you know, burst onto the scene at a very, very young age, maybe 5-6 years ago now, and still searching really. You know, even the most, I think, staunch Manchester United fans will say, still searching for that consistency week in, week out. You know, it takes time. It takes time to get to that level, you know, to become brilliant week in, week out. And sometimes that doesn't happen until around about sort of, you know, 25, 26 sort of age.
Unless your name is Wayne Rooney. I mean, he's just, retired from the game. He's gone into management full time. But are you serious? Marcus Rashford has still not hit his potential?
Well, would you say he's consistent week in, week out?
No.
For the ability, well, so therefore he's not reached his full potential.
I don't get shot. I don't get shot for saying this, but I think what he's doing off the field is helping with his reputation on the field.
And I think that gives him a little bit of extra leeway on the field, because I think, you know, if it's Paul Pogba, he gets slaughtered for some of those performances. Marcus Rashford has undoubted ability. There was also no transfer fee involved. And he's he's an exceptional player. You know, we've seen that from time to time. But he's not exceptional every single week. You know, that consistency level isn't always there. And it happens, you know, to young players. It takes time to build that belief to be good every single week. And that's why, you know, you do get the exceptions, you know, like Messi. Even Ronaldo wasn't brilliant when he first started. You know, let's go back to that. Remember, when he broke into Manchester United team, he wasn't brilliant week in, week out. You know, there's a lot of flicks and tricks, and he wasn't massively effective a lot of the time. So when it is someone like Rooney or Messi that break in and are just brilliant from day one, from 18 years old, then, you know, that's why they become the exceptions.
Okay, so we'll talk about young players, if you can still consider them young, coming through the ranks. And I've always been linked to Manchester United. One of your favorites, Jack Grealish, and Maddison, in terms of their growth and development. That goal from Maddison for Leicester City. If you're a football fan, I mean, that was brilliant, wasn't it?
I mean, they're both very, very good players. You know, and they're sort of starting to get to that sort of level now where the performances are pretty consistent. You know, when they're fit, and Maddison's had his injuries, and that's why I think, you know, he hasn't been as maybe consistent over the early part of this season. But they're both very, very good players. Who would you pick? I think it comes down to who you play with them and what formation you play and what team, because they obviously work in certain formations. They obviously work with certain teammates. And this is why sometimes, you know, the national team is very, very difficult to pick, because Maddison knows what he's got around him. You know, he knows that Tielemans is going to sit maybe a little bit deep. He's got Jamie Vardy that he can play those balls through for. And he gets used to that. You get used to playing that way. You know, it becomes I would call it a learned instinct, that you get the ball and you just know that you can make that pass. You almost don't have to look up. You can just play it because you know that player is going to be there. Same for Grealish. You know, he's slightly different. He's a bit more of a dribbler in the way that he plays. But it's learning to play with those players around you. You know, that is the key, because it's always going to be a team game no matter what. So there's not a lot between them, in my opinion. They're both fantastic players, both got a lot of ability, both going to score goals and be creative. I think it just depends, again, you know, what team you play them in and how they get used to playing in that team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But if you were one of the top 4 teams, and regardless of what they finish, just say, for example, if it's a United, perhaps a Liverpool, Tottenham, Man City, who would you pick first amongst the two?
Phil Foden.
Thank you very, very much for that, Animals. You made my job a lot more easier. Is it a bit shocking for you? I know you have your reservations about Jack Grealish, but do you have a... Oh, sorry, that's my phone. If you heard that, I do apologize. But is it a bit worrying that at times you hear a lot of praise from his management and staff rather than his teammates? Or am I just hunting for stories?
No, I think... Aston Villa, they've been down in the Championship. You know, they just about survived in the Premier League. They're doing well this season. It's a different season. The challenge for Jack Grealish will come when the pressure changes and the expectation changes to winning games week in, week out. And that pressure from going from a club where he is the star week in, week out, and even if they lose, he's still the star, and he still gets all the plaudits, and it's not a huge problem, to go into a Manchester City, a Manchester United, where if you lose, you get terrorised. Simple as that. You know, if you don't perform, you're out of the team. And it's a different kind of pressure. Going out having to win every single week and having to perform to that top level, being given no leeway whatsoever. And I'm talking about, you know, Manchester United, Rashford, Pogba, those sort of players. It's a different kind of scrutiny. And only then do you find out whether the player will be good enough. I'm sure it will be. But, you know, there will always be that question mark. You know, can you do it in the Champions League? Can you do it international level? And that's what sets the best apart from the rest.
Okay, let's talk about the best. Liverpool, champions of the Premier League. Manchester United challenging for the trophy. Who would have thought that would have happened in this day and age with whatever's been going on behind the scenes, with all the calls for Ole to be sacked? Liverpool United traditionally has been the game everybody wants to watch. It is the most watched game club-wise globally. But who's favourites for you in this one? I know it's easy to say Liverpool, but don't you think United have a shout in this game?
Oh, definitely.
I just answered my question.
Well, no, but Manchester, you know, is there a better time to play Liverpool at the moment? Two centre midfielders playing at centre half. You know, United are in good form at the moment. You know, they're on the rise. They're top of the table. They can extend that league. They can extend that gap over Liverpool. Liverpool have done incredibly well, but they've not been at their very, very best, although they've been winning games. Their front three is still incredibly dangerous. You know, we know that. They've got experience. And you can never write Liverpool off because of Mane, because of Salah. I think this game is almost impossible to call. I could easily see it. You could make a case for almost any score in this game. You know, you can make a case for 2-0 either way. You can make a case for 4-1 either way. You know, and you can make a case for a 0-0 draw. I just think there is so much on this game at the moment. It's a massive game, I think, for Liverpool. If Liverpool were to lose this and Manchester United go a little bit further ahead, psychologically, I think that's damaging. Especially if Manchester United get a penalty. I'm not sure what Jurgen Klopp will have to say about that. But I think it's a huge game. You know, no one expected Manchester United to be in this position. You know, 5 or 6 weeks ago. You know, they were 15th in the table, just been knocked out of the Champions League, and it was like, is Ole the right man for the job? And suddenly now they're top of the table. So it's a huge game. For a bigger game, I think, for Liverpool. Liverpool can't afford to lose this game, so it's going to be very, very intriguing, very, very interesting to see what happens.
Fair enough. We spoke about this last week, and we can keep it short in terms of perhaps club jumping into the transfer window to find that centre back. You mentioned Johnny Evans, you mentioned Nathan Ake. That doesn't seem to be happening. Would this come back to haunt him? I'll ask you again, because until you mentioned it as a problem at the back for them, doesn't he need somebody?
Maybe they do. Maybe today.
If United score big in this game.
Maybe exactly. If United win this game, then it might just tip the scales and say, right, okay, we definitely need somebody. You know, if there's a defensive error for Liverpool in this game at centre half, then Jurgen Klopp might just go, right, okay, can't afford to do this again. You know, we've got away with it up till now, but can't afford to do it. So maybe this game is pivotal, not just in the race for the title, but obviously also in the transfer market for Liverpool.
All right, I'm going to put you in this spot. Give me a winner right now.
Liverpool.
Looking at you, Danny.
Liverpool.
Whew, thank you very much, Mr. Danny Mills. It's been an absolute pleasure. I shall see you next week. Until then, don't forget to catch all the highlights, and all our talking points are on our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook page. Until the next time, take care.